quality of a Fire Emblem map can be separated into 5 different factors. Flavor, how well the map matches the story and atmosphere that it is trying to portray, and whether or not it succeeds at making you feel like you're really experiencing the story as the developers intended. Objective, what the map is asking you to do in order to finish the chapter, be it seizing, routing, escaping, or defending. Is it offering you an objective that is interesting to work towards? Replayability, you finished the chapter, now how do you feel about it? Frustrated? Relieved? Satisfied? There's any number of possible outcomes that can occur after finishing a chapter, so consider whether or not you'd enjoy playing the chapter again on a subsequent playthrough. Difficulty. Difficulty might not be an important factor for everyone, but a fair amount of players yearn to be challenged by Fire Emblem, to be given a puzzle to solve with the resources provided. Was the map that you just finished difficult in a compelling way? Enjoyability. Plain and simple, is the map fun to play? Are you having a good time whilst playing it, and if so, are you able to articulate exactly why the map is so stimulating? When all of these variables are managed effectively, what you're left with is an incredibly satisfying chapter to play through, providing a memorable experience for the player that they'll hopefully be excited to enjoy again during a second playthrough. And if you don't pay attention to this formula, what you're given is some of the worst the series has to offer. My name's Blute. Welcome to F.O.R.D.E. And welcome back to another episode of F.O.R.D.E. Here we are at the end of the line, the very final stop of our soiree into the brightest and bleakest chapters across the many games of Fire Emblem. And I thought an excellent way to end our first season would be to end with an excellent chapter. Our anagram from last week was Ethos through Foe, which can be carefully rearranged into Hero of the West, which also has a bunch of different interpretations, but the translation I'm using calls it that, so it's probably close enough. Obviously, I get a bunch of requests for chapters, but I want to say this chapter in particular has received at least 3 to 4 specific requests, and I can't blame the people asking for it in the slightest. Since this chapter is both fan-fucking-tastic, it's an excellent chapter right out of the gate. I'll just spoil a lot of the categories. And I'd be willing to make an argument for this chapter being the best chapter in Binding Blade, in my personal opinion. Not even in my personal opinion, like, if you just look at it objectively from, like, an actual, like, if you use the fucking categories, like, this chapter is just absolutely incredible, man. Off the top of my head, the only chapters that are really competing is, like, Chapter 7, Revolt in Ostia, which is, like, arguable. That chapter is, like, how much of your masochist side are you willing to show? Whereas, like, this chapter is just legitimately good. So let's go ahead and end Season 1 with a bang, shall we? Beginning with flavor, as always. Flavor is pretty nice this time around, even if it seems somewhat simplistic from the outset. FE6 is known for having a pretty dry story overall, be it through how it tells it, with pretty much just having a very, like, plain and simple conversation between Roy and Molinis at the start of each map, where Roy just kind of asks, what's going on? And then Molinis just reads, like, the wiki entry on the chapter. It's like, well, in this chapter, Ostia is blah 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 blah. So that's kind of an issue. And there's also the fact that the majority of the characters don't really serve a significant purpose in the overall narrative. However, the quality of the story aside, I really appreciate what this chapter presents to the player in the form of a village being sieged by brigands, with our heroes joining the fray in the aid of the common man. Now, this might seem super basic, like just incredibly milquetoast, but I love me a good village siege, especially one that's done in the mid-game of all things, which is pretty uncommon. Like, I think a village siege can really just set the tone quite nicely for your game. It's like a good litmus test for how well your game can present its story, because it's really, really simple, you know? Like, it's important to show that you are still able to present your simple chapters effectively, so to say. So, the main feeling that this chapter needs to evoke for the player is a sense of urgency, and boy, friggin' howdy, does it do it in droves. I'm pretty used to playing B route when it comes to Binding Blade, since I guess my brain is currently set to B for Bartry when it should be set to A for which is probably the sound you're going to make when you realize just how tight the time constraints are for this chapter. I apologize for screaming into the mic. As stated, the main goal of the map is to protect the various villages, and the game definitely delivers on this threat by making it so once the brigands spawn in, you better start hauling ass, or you're going to be dealing with some very unhappy, now homeless people. A lot of chapters like to present the idea of a threat, but then not effectively follow through on it, and make the gameplay flavor integration just not anything that special. Like, off the top of my head, Scion of Legend really feels like it should be just a wackier chapter with a Wayne's inclusion, but it's just a very bland chapter overall, and the flavor doesn't really work. So it's wonderful to play a chapter that promises a lot of situations and fully delivers on them. Furthermore, to improve on this aspect even further is how they distribute the dialogue throughout the chapter. Again, a good amount of maps in Fire Emblem take the very lazy and unambitious route of just dumping all of the cutscenes and character interactions at the beginning and the end of the map, leaving the gameplay in the center potentially just kind of barren when it comes to offering any significant flavor. Some games like Shadow Dragon and FE6 for the most part is very guilty of doing this. Hero of the West does not fall into this category. I noticed this when playing this again. On average, every 3 turns or so, there's a new escalating drama or threat that arises in the enemy army, whether it's Melody and Gale discussing life, or Klein joining the fight, or the boss deciding that he's God's bravest boy and sending brigands to assault the paupers. Like, there's always something going on. So many chapters can feel just bland and lifeless, so I really appreciate the fact that I can say that Hero of the West genuinely impresses on basically every front flavor-wise. It has excellent pacing, a simple but interesting plot weaved very well into gameplay, and its key theme of having a threat that is constantly growing is presented very, very well. And honestly, considering that it's FE6 and it's mostly just bereft of any meaningful like spice or sweetness for the most part, I think I'm gonna give the chapter a 5 out of 5 for flavor. Like, it just works, man. I genuinely, I can't find any faults with this other than the fact that it's FE6, so it just might not be that interesting to a lot of people. It's really as simple as that. Like, I said it just works. It just works. I'm moving on. Now, for objective, yes. That's my response to objective? Yes. We've been getting a lot of chapters with really, good objectives recently, and I'm all for it. This might be my favorite category. Main objective is C's, as always, so I don't really need to go into the explicit details there. No. Where this chapter absolutely thrives and excels is with its side objectives. It is not an exaggeration to say that the way this chapter handles its many villages, and its many recruitments, and the brigands just spawning in, it's borderline perfect. It has faults, it's not perfect, borderline perfect, but I'd say almost 95% of it is masterfully done. Starting off with the villages, holy fuck, there's almost a double-digit number of villages, which is wild. There are so many houses to visit. These 8 houses are carrying items of varying levels of usefulness, as always, but more importantly, not all of them are actually in danger. I know I like to talk about actually offering the player a threat to their temporarily available side objectives, but I actually really like the fact that only half of the houses can be destroyed by brigands. This allows for a gradual escalation of danger as the map progresses through its turns, meaning the player starts off relatively complacent, not really moving that swiftly, visiting the villages at their own pace, until, just like that, brigands appear and the stakes are immediately raised. Moreover, the stakes are raised even further through the use of Klein, Tate, and Echidna. Seriously, there's 3 new recruitments in this chapter. Hell, there's 4 if you count Narum. But the main 3 offer so much to the map, it's absolutely nuts. Normally a recruitment would just act as another unit for you to add to your litany of inventory, like just another fucking spot to fill on your bench. But Hero of the West manages to work those recruitments into something far more impactful. For Klein and Tate, they're acting as the leaders of their little battalions, that being one comprised of archers and one of Pegasus Knights. These groups, along with being a threat and actually needing to be managed carefully, also act as a side objective past to the recruitment of their respective leaders, as keeping these squads alive until the end of the chapter will reward you with a promotion item according to their classes. This is what I mean, man. This chapter just offers so much in terms of side objectives. You gotta visit all of the villages, you gotta recruit every new unit, you gotta make sure the green units make it all the way to the very end. And it's all stitched together so effectively. It's like a nice homemade sweater of a map made by your significant other. It's just so cozy. It's all so wonderful and perfect. It's not perfect. It's almost perfect. I would love to say it's perfect, but there are definitely some blemishes on this otherwise excellent map. namely in the form of Echidna's recruitment and how Klein and Tate's AI function. Echidna's appearance is a little less egregious, since the main way to combat her chance of potentially dying is through simply just playing a little bit quicker through the use of mounted units. However, for Klein and Tate, if you are unaware, these two just have a 50% chance to not move when it is their turn, which can be extremely fucking frustrating to play around, since there's literally no skill involved with the mechanic. Half the time, these two will just drool all over themselves and stand still. Maybe you'll get lucky, and maybe you won't. It's really, really annoying to say that an otherwise really, genuinely well-crafted chapter is hindered by a mechanic that you have just zero control over, as otherwise this would be an easy 5 out of 5. But unfortunately, I got a docker point, so 4 out of 5 will have to do. Its objective is still utterly fantastic. I just love this chapter's objective to pieces. But god damn, can it be eye-rolling to watch Klein just not move 2, maybe even 3 turns in a row. It's so unfortunate. Surprise, it's replayability. Replayability is great this time around. Virtually no complaints for it. As always, the main aspects that you want for your map to be highly replayable are variety and optimization. As for variety, I'd say Hero of the West does very well at offering the player plenty to do on a subsequent playthrough. As for blind players, it's very, very unlikely that you'll be able to complete every single side objective without having prior knowledge of what goes on in the chapter, so to say. It's more probable that some of the villages will get destroyed, meaning that they'll lose out on some great rewards. But by just having this quote perfect run be unlikely on your first playthrough, there's a good chance that players will be left curious about what would happen if they were able to succeed on every front. This is also where the optimization factor comes into play, as on your second playthrough, obviously this will vary from player to player, some people won't care about this, but for the other people, they'll know what to do going into the battle prep screen. This is one of those chapters, kind of similar to Chapter 7, where you want a game plan going in. Otherwise, it can get pear-shaped pretty goddamn quickly. It almost forces the player to make, a priority list of what really matters to them. How much do they value the Orion's Bolt from saving Klein's archers? Or do you really want the reward from the top right village? Just stuff like that. Even with planning, it can be kind of tricky to receive all of the rewards. And personally, I love having to use my brain. Believe it or not, I do actually use this thing that rattles around in my skull every now and then. So making every move towards the middle of the chapter, your moves towards the beginning of the chapter can be pretty lax and you'll still mostly be fine, but I'd say once Klein and Tate spawn in, or the brigands spawn in, you have to start, pulling up the Minority Report, just UI in your brain. You have to start fucking Sherlocking it up. You really gotta make every move count. Plus, having a bunch of breakable walls scattered across the map also offers you new potential routes to take if you want to spice things up. Yeah, replayability is great this time around. It's not perfect, you could definitely add more, although no, it's not perfect. It's still very, very good. I'm gonna give it a 4 out of 5, and I'm happy with that score. I am because it's not perfect, but this might be one of those times where I'm not entirely sure how you would improve it. Maybe just add more breakable walls and stuff like that. Just tiny things. This would be a 4.5 out of 5. Either way. Now, to difficulty. FE6 hard, please clap. Legitimately, though. I know a lot of people take issue with how FE6 presents its difficulty, and that most of the challenge on hard mode is just getting through the unbelievably brutal early game. FE6's early game is second to none. Maybe outside of, whatchamacallit, FE12's Lunatic Prologue. Bro, FE12's Lunatic Prologue. I'm so glad I haven't done an FE12 chapter. FE12 is the only game we haven't covered on F.O.R.D.E yet, and I'm just gonna say this, I'm really fucking glad we haven't covered FE12. FE12 sucks. So, it's also kind of disappointing in that the rest of the game is mostly pretty easy in comparison to the early game, especially in the mid-game. Most of the enemies around this period won't be wielding absolutely absurd stats that they did in the early game, or dangerous weapons. In fact, most of them will actually be on pretty mediocre classes like Fighter and Archer, who can boast somewhat meaningful damage, but they have to use FE6 axes, which, they may as well not be a weapon type unless your name rhymes with Schmonzales. No, the real difficulty from this map will come from how much you want to perfect the map's structure. Some people will be perfectly content just letting a lot of those villages perish, and that's fine. That's absolutely fine. That's the beauty of side objectives. They're completely optional at the end of the day, so for players who might feel, I don't want to say intimidated because that sounds super condescending, ooh, are you intimidated by the villages? For players who just don't really care about the villages, or they It's like, I don't really want to put this much effort into thinking about all of the side objectives. They might forego villages in favor of just getting the new recruitable units, or vice versa, who knows? I don't know how everyone plays Fire Emblem. As for me, I'd like it to be a little bit more difficult. Not too much, just a little bit more like Parmesan on my pasta. I actually do like that FE6's mid-game isn't too difficult after the onslaught of fiery fucking hell that was the first 7 chapters, but even still, maybe just some more challenging enemy types here and there would help. Place a cavalier here and there, or like a hero maybe towards the end of the map to spice it up a little. Aside from that, I despise the previously mentioned AI of Klein and Tate, so the difficulty is definitely not without its flaws, but I'm still pretty satisfied with it overall. I'm gonna give the category a 3 out of 5. It'd probably get a 4 out of 5 if it wasn't for the inconsistent green unit AI. Maybe 3 out of 5 is a little bit low. This chapter is still really fucking good. Even if this doesn't sound high, this is still good. Now here we are. E. Enjoyability. Our final enjoyability, can you believe that? As always, big element of opinion with this category. And for me personally, I always absolutely adore playing through this chapter. It acts as a really nice, what would you call it, anticipation chapter for me. As it's no secret that FE6's early game can just be really, really goddamn long and boring. But like personally, I don't think FE6's early game is super super incomparably difficult. I think it's just mostly boring. There's no two ways about it. Maps like Chapter 5 and Chapter 8 especially are straight up they're just bad, and they take for fucking ever. So by getting through these rotting carcasses masquerading as Fire Emblem maps, you're rewarded with Chapter 9 onwards, featuring some genuinely fantastic chapters. But out of all of them, Hero of the West is like by far the strongest. It offers amazing side objectives and excellent storytelling, and it's got Echidna, man! How could you not like Echidna? She looks like a goddamn action figure! I fucking love her! Also, a little bit of a side note, this is kind of unimportant. Maybe I'm just gaslighting myself here, but did Echidna not have heterochromia at some point? I'm looking at her hero's art right now, and she doesn't have heterochromia. I could have sworn she had, like, 2 different colored eyes at one point. Maybe I'm crazy. Regardless, literally the only thing about this chapter I don't like is the stupid AI and maybe some lackluster difficulty. But as I said, not every chapter needs to be difficult through standard means like enemy density and stat quality. Some can be difficult through side objectives. And I don't really think there's anything else to be said here. So I'll give the category a decisive 4 out of 5. And that is going to wrap it up for our very first season of F.O.R.D.E. I'm going to make it a tradition for our mid-season and season breaks to end with a genuinely incredible chapter, similar to FE4 Prologue. Just feels really nice and comfy, you know? I always prefer talking about good chapters as opposed to bad chapters. Hero of the West, as I said, just works. It feels like it was designed by a bunch of developers who legitimately wanted to make an intricately made chapter with tons of little quirks here and there that all add up into one fascinatingly engaging experience. It's the first chapter to score in the 20s, and honestly, outside of chapters like Revolt and Ostia, maybe like chapter 21 as well. Chapter 21's a really cool chapter. Other than those, I can't think of another chapter that could possibly hold the title of best chapter. So congratulations, Hero of the West. We finally covered some of the best the series has to offer. As for our anagram, there is none. We're done. The first season of F.O.R.D.E. is complete, and holy moly, I didn't expect this to go as well as it did, I'll be completely honest. This was originally going to be 6 episodes. Can you believe that? Just 6. No joke. I originally planned this to just have 6, like, chapter reviews just to see how it goes. But I really enjoyed producing them, and it felt nice to just check in with you guys every week. So I'm, like, already looking forward to bringing F.O.R.D.E. back in the future. And if you're wondering why it's getting put on the sidelines for now, 1, burnout. Burnout is scary, and you should avoid it. I am beginning to feel burnt out, much like I did with the FE4 episode, so I'm gonna just take a step back for a while. But 2, I also just want to make F.O.R.D.E. look a bit better than it does right now. Like, I am happy with how it looks and how it's presented, but there's just little things here and there, like the logo could look better. Stuff like the ratings not appearing until episode 20 was just plain old amateurish. Like, come on, man, that's embarrassing. How did I not have that until then? That's just being fucking lazy. So, rest assured, when F.O.R.D.E. comes back in the, like, relatively near future, it won't be super long until it's back. It won't be like a year or something. It'll be like a few months. It'll be mostly the same size, but it will be better than ever. So for now, farewell. Hope you all are having a wonderful time, and make sure to get some good old rest. Sleep tight, don't let the bed bugs bite, and most importantly of all, don't forget about the light.